a built-in disadvantage with the Senate, right? Because there's more red states than are blue states. So because you need, if you block everything and you make it so that you need 60 votes for every single thing, what that means is that inevitably the Democrats have to get Republicans to vote with them, right? So then that means that nothing gets passed. So for example, Obama proposed a jobs bill, right? Something like 80% of Americans like this bill. They really like this bill. And if they ask them about individual things, they love it, right? So putting teachers back to work and all that, the firemen and all of that stuff, people love it. People love the bill. But what happened in the Senate 2 weeks ago? It got filibustered. Completely anonymously, we don't know who did it. So now you need 60 votes, right? To pass it, to block it twice. Now, it didn't pass because the Democrats didn't have enough votes to pass the bill. Okay, now, why not only the Democrats not have enough votes, but some in their own party voted against it. Why? Why would they do that? Why would somebody, for example, the senator from West Virginia was the one that did that, that voted against his own party. Why would somebody like Manchin vote against a popular bill? Why would you do that? He would do that because he has incentives to do that. What are his incentives? Here are his incentives. The issue is that he knows the bill is going to lose. Why is the bill going to lose? Because he knows that the Republicans are not going to vote for it. So if the Republicans are not going to vote for it, why should you vote for it? Right? Because if you're from West Virginia, somebody's going to, the next election, when it comes around, somebody's going to run a campaign ad that says, Senator so-and-so voted with Obama 90% of the time, 95% of the time, or whatever, right? And if you're in West Virginia where Obama is not very popular, you don't want to be associated with him, right? So in a bill, why should you even bother voting for a bill that you know is not going to pass? So that creates incentives to have almost complete deadlock. Now, as far as Republicans, why are they so good at bringing or at having so much discipline? If you notice, usually what you have is Republicans all voting en masse together in block, unless you have the Tea Party, which is even more radical. But everybody usually votes, especially in the Senate, together. Why can they do that? They do that because, as I told you before, they don't have the problem that the Democrats do. They don't have to have a bigger coalition with conservatives and liberals. It's just conservatives mostly. And if you look at the little handout that I gave you, a professor at Northwestern put this together about how Democrats and Republicans have moved away from, or not, well, not moved away, but where they have in terms of liberal conservative. If you look at Republicans, they're way, way conservative, far more than Democrats are liberal. So anyway, so this leads them to lots of discipline with the Republicans so that they can basically vote in block. And because Democrats vote against their own party, this is what they do. They say, look, there's a bipartisan block against Obama's bill. Even though it's popular, even though people want it, even though there's a majority of people in the Senate that voted for it, it says there's a bipartisan disagreement. Okay, now, those of you who are in the camp, you probably know that most people don't care about politics. And most people don't follow politics very closely, right? Because people have things like kids and jobs. And so they can't follow very closely with everything that's going on. So what happens when most Americans hear about what happened with the jobs bill? This is what happens. The media tells them, hey, there was a bipartisan block on Obama's jobs bill. So then Americans are like, oh, it's not bipartisan, it must be bad. There must be something wrong with the bill. Even if they don't know, even if they like the actual thing that's in the bill, they might think that since it didn't pass, it's obviously a bad thing. So that leads to more frustration, people voting less, and it's kind of a cycle that goes on and on and on. Now, one final thing about the curse of bipartisanship. So, like I told you before, before the 1960s, because there were both liberals and conservatives in both parties, there was more bipartisanship because naturally, if you were a liberal or if you were on the left, someone like Kennedy, he could work with someone on the Republican side, like Chaffee, say, who was the Republican senator from Rhode Island, and it was fine, right? Because they were both liberal, they could agree on issues of policy. And so automatically you would get bipartisan, some kind of bipartisan measure. But because as the parties have gotten polarized over time, what the Republicans have figured out, and this is brilliant, I do give them credit for this, the Senate leader has figured out that bills are to be called bipartisan, not based on policies, but based on whether Republicans and Democrats vote for them, right? So, if you make a bill, by definition, bipartisan, whether Republicans vote for it too, then you can move that bill, the actual policy of the bill, way to the right. Right? Because then you just say to the Democrats, hey, if you want me to vote for that bill, you need to get my vote. You need to get Republican votes. And so you just make it really far to the right, and then you get what you want in the first place, right? And if it doesn't pass, then you say, look, media, there's something wrong with our American system because it's not bipartisan. And if you look at if you just look at the media, right? If you look at, say, on Sunday talk shows, and I'm not talking about Fox News, just any kind of talk show, especially with the healthcare bill, right? People actually like the individual aspects of the bill. Before Obama proposed it, exactly the kind of thing that Obama proposed, people liked, the actual policy. But as it moved through the Congress and people started talking about, the Republicans said, we're not going to vote for this bill, and more, they complained that it wasn't bipartisan enough. Then the American people said, oh, this is really radical. It's not bipartisan. Why isn't it bipartisan? It must be bad. And so because people don't follow very closely, they don't realize that they're being duped on this aspect. So there you go. Those are the institutional bases. So the point here, the main point here is that whatever you might do, and with the issue with Occupy Boston, the great success that they've had, as I was telling some people, is that they have changed the conversation. But whatever the issue is, it doesn't matter if we change the conversation alone, because there are structural reasons why the system doesn't work. Just having people come on the streets alone is not going to change anything. Thank you.